Don from the board. Hopefully you've come along to check out the stream. I actually don't know how many people are here right now watching, but I guess we'll get started. So hopefully the audio is actually working today, because the last time that I attempted a live stream after I had a Windows 10 update, it messed around a little bit with my sound drivers and my microphone lines. But I'm hoping that it's all good right now. So at least on OBS, which is what I stream with, the sound indicator seems to be working. Now today I am going to be building a Gherkin, which is a 30 key keyboard. I think it's actually around 30% technically, but most people will call it a 30%, even though I think in terms of ratios it's just slightly over 30%, under 30%, something like that. It doesn't really matter. Now, just having a quick look at our chats. Hello, Harshit and Ryan, thank you very much for coming along and checking out the stream. I don't know how long this is going to be today, but we'll get through it and see how we go. So now, because I've got a really bright window out here, it's actually midday on a Saturday in Sydney. Weather's nice and fine. It is actually pretty glary, so obviously my face is probably a bit washed out because of the light background. I'm going to turn off this front-facing camera because obviously everything's going to be happening on my actual table right here below. So let's just switch off number 2 and then we can concentrate on what's happening on the table. Now, for those who aren't very familiar with what the Gherkin is, and I'm just going to move my little setup over here. The Gherkin is a 30 key ortholinear keyboard, and you can see the matrix here is it's a 3 row by 10 columns across. And the particular build version that I've actually got is I'm running a top plate, which is this guy here, and then I'm also running a bottom plate, which is going to be this guy here. Now, this is slightly different from the default build that is on the 40% Club website, because they actually use a version which has 2 of the PCBs, and so the bottom plate is actually another PCB. We're not doing that in this build. We're going to be using this bottom plate for that, which means the PCB is actually floating because it's going to be held in by the switch plate, because the sizes are slightly different and the standoffs are slightly different as well. Now, Harshit, you've just asked, how is it usable as a functional keyboard? It's a very good question. I think for alphas, obviously, because you've got 26 keys, you've got one for spacebar, you've got one for your enter, so that takes 28 keys, and then you've got 2 left, which basically allows you a combination of function layers. I'm not really going to use it probably for the purpose of a functional keyboard. I think it's a bit of fun just to play around and sort of see what it's like, but I'm more likely to convert it into some kind of macro pad, maybe for commonly used, alt key functions, such as like in my work, I do a lot of symbols, so the degree symbol or lambda or things like that. Or it can even be used to set up like hot links and things. So I can hit the button and it'll drop into URL, that kind of thing. So what else do we need to get this build happening? Now, I've got my bits and pieces that you can kind of see in the background here underneath the PCB. I don't know how well that's going to look if I lift it up. Oh, there we go. All right, so you're going to need diodes. You're going to need some switches, obviously. And then there's a Pro Micro here as well with header pins. Now, I'm not using the IC socket style that you can basically put in, take out the Pro Micro, only because that wasn't really an option when I went in for the group buy. But I don't really plan on pulling out the Pro Micro and diddling around with it terribly much. And if I do set it up right, I can always short the pins to do the hard reset as well. So 6 deuces does seem a lot tougher than a plank. So few keys would be really tough to use as a primary board. Yeah, I think you're right, but obviously for a travel board, which is what Ryan is saying, especially if it's going to be something that you might just plug into your telephone, your mobile phone, use an OTC cable, that kind of thing. And if you're just typing SMSs and stuff like that, I don't think you really need to be terribly complex with it. It's probably not something that you would use as a work driver all the time kind of thing. Now, I'm also using 0.71 solder. So, a mate of mine managed to pick this up for me earlier in the week. And I'm going to be using my El Cheapo Duratec soldering iron, which is this sucker here. Not very fancy, anything like that. I got some snips over here for cutting bits off, and then I've just got your usual sort of soldering bits, a bit of a wet pad over here, soldering iron stand over here in the background, that kind of thing. You'll have to excuse me if my voice gets a little bit croaky because I've been sick this week, so hopefully it'll last out for the session. Now, with any of these kind of builds, the first thing, of course, you want to do is put in your diodes. Now, I haven't pre-bent my diodes, and we'll see that you've got all of your diodes in these D spots that they've got here, and they've also got the polarity with that line aligned so that the black bits should actually end up being there. So, let's just get started and start slotting in some of these diodes. Now, obviously, whoa, because of this is actually quite the platform I've got here with my Alpha Dia quad hands workbench that I'm using right now. It's actually positioned really high, so it's kind of a little bit funky to sort of work at that height. I've never really done that before. Usually most soldering work is done probably a little bit closer to the table surface, a bit more comfortable, but I thought this would probably be a little bit better for the camera and you could see a bit more detail as well. So while I'm doing that, yeah, I don't know, throw some questions or have some chat if you want. Now there's actually 7 people watching right now, so thank you very much for the 7 people who are watching, even if you're lurking. I don't know who all of you are. I obviously know 3 of you, but yeah, thank you very much. Now, while we're actually just watching me plug in these diodes, I do want to say, if you like our content, our videos and whatnot, please do hit like on this video. I've been told that YouTube has very specific algorithms, so obviously the more likes that we have and the more comments, the more likelihood that we're going to show up on front page for people, especially because it is a live feed. And then it will also be more recommended because there are more likes. So obviously if you hit like, that would be fantastic. Hey, Tenzatsu Zangetsu. And hello to Eucarius. Thank you very much for coming along, checking out this stream. Now, this is actually the first time I've built on stream, so I do apologize if things go a little bit pear-shaped. Yeah, so how's the weather, guys, over where you're at? It's quite nice. It's a little bit cool today over in Sydney because we are in autumn, about to sort of head into winter now. Today is a bit of a relaxed day for me because normally I'd be out shopping. However, I'm not shopping today because later this afternoon I got to go out to a wedding reception. In your living room setup, hey? I wish I had space to have a living room set up, it, because my living room is almost permanently got laundry set up in it because of my little one. We use cloth nappies, and therefore there's always laundry. It's far more economical in the long run, and it's also a lot more environmentally friendly because there's less landfill. A lot of people say, oh, but you know, the costs of actually doing the washing and water and all that kind of stuff, there's financial cost and there's environmental cost. So I think it pans out better if going with the cloth nappy route. Plus, it's also cheaper in terms of just buying them because nappies are bloody expensive, at least in Australia. Now, of course, if you're going, what the hell are nappies? Because it's very sort of Australian, UK-ish term, nappies are what Americans call diapers. So you've got a Bluetooth emitter. Okay, that's pretty cool. And the GNAP, that 40% club, would have better on the board. Okay. Gherkins would be cool as a fixture on the 3D printer. Yeah, that actually would be fantastic. Now, I do have a 3D printer. It's a MakerBot Replicator 2X. That said, it doesn't really need a keyboard the way that it's designed and set up, but I can imagine for, you know, things like self-built rep wraps, Prusa types, that kind of thing, if you wanted the ability to actually change G-code and commands and stuff like that, yeah, it would probably be more than perfect. The small form factor would really allow you to get on board with that. Almost finished this top row. I can tell you, this is actually quite challenging doing it from the height that it's at. Oh, come on, you can get in there. Of course, I don't want to force any of these guys into these holes. Now, just to sort of give you an indication maybe of how high I'm working, what I'll do is I'll turn the camera back on front facing, right? And you can see that's how high up above my table it actually is running. And then of course, back over that end on the back, you can actually see my my 3D printer with my spool holders and stuff like that that I've printed myself. So let's keep going with putting more diodes. Yeah, India uses the term nappies. I do wonder where that sort of distinction came in. I did have somebody ask me about nappies and diapers, especially because of adult products. We don't really have people over here that say adult nappies. It's always adult diapers for some reason. Yeah?
Comes from napkin.
So my wife just told me it comes from napkin.
Diaper,
And
it comes from a similar term, but it was like, because it's older, it's a similar term.
And my wife just said that diapers come from an older term. It's a similar term, but not quite the same. So I guess there you go. Bit of a English lesson there, or something like that. But adult nappies doesn't just sound right. So adult diapers, I don't know. Maybe it's a product thing. Kind of like Kleenexes for tissues and stuff like that. Wow, this is really slow going. But you know what? At least it gives you a good idea of what time frames are like when you're actually building. If you've never actually built a keyboard before. This is going to be my third keyboard build. The first one that I built was just a plain GH60. So all I had to do was just solder switches on, and that was it. Good to go. The second one I built was a Ergodox. That was a little bit more complex. And with this one, I'd say this one's probably, the Gherkin's going to be similar complexity to an Ergodox in that it was diode soldering and it was, you know, controller soldering and stuff like that. But the build order is slightly different because you're soldering on both sides and there's a particular build order. The Ergodox does have a particular build order as well, and I didn't live stream obviously that one, but I can tell you right now, for a first build, that probably wasn't actually the best one to get started on because I did make a couple of mistakes following some of the guides. I wouldn't say that they were badly written, but some clarification probably could have been better on the writing guides to help with that. Hey, we're up to, oh, we had 10 people. We're now down to 9 again. 2-hour job. Well, just as well, I do have 2 hours today to spend on it. Now, of course, if I do run out of time, because I'd have to get ready to go out to this wedding reception later on, we'll just have to call it the day. And yeah, I'll have to finish building it in my own time, and hopefully I can post up a little bit of a review of my experiences in getting this baby together. So right now we are running 13 minutes, but of course that includes a little bit of a chat and intro that I had earlier. So everyone's so quiet. So quiet. Unlike, of course, when people watch Ski with Pete's streams, because he's got a bucket load of viewers and followers, and the chat just goes on non-stop. Alrighty, now this one's a little bit confusing. Okay, so there's MX21, and D21 is right there. Make sure I put it in the D, not in the resistor slot. That would be all bad. Can I type on Ergodox as easy as a normal row staggered keyboard? No. I did try it. It's something that I spent a little bit of time on. I would say if I had enough time and I was dedicating myself to it, I probably could. What really threw me off more than anything else was because I don't type with proper touch typing. I have a bastardized version of touch typing, just learnt from personal use over the years, as well as sort of doing a little bit of typing tutor stuff online over the years. And I don't use proper finger placement for the V and B keys. So when I started typing on the Ergodox, I would always miss hit on the bottom row. And because of the fact that it's Ergodox stagger, I would make a lot of typos on the bottom row. Getting used to using enter and backspace and stuff like that using my thumb for the thumb clusters wasn't an issue. I just had to sort of train myself out of using my pinky, and that was okay. That was alright. Does the 40% Club have a Gerber file? It's a very good question. I don't know where it is stored, but it is definitely somewhere on GitHub, because there's been multiple group buys, and it seems to be pretty much just grab that file and away you go. Now, Gentleman Shark, who is the one that ran the group buy that this kit came from, was doing that, and then Asus Overclocked, I believe, did a buy as well. And then there's, I think, an Australian fellow that was actually doing one as well. Because when you do the orders, obviously on places like Easy EDA or, you know, Seed or wherever else, there's minimum like 5 sets that you have to get. And, well, unless if you plan on buying 5 of them, you got a couple left over. So people just end up turning them into either big group buys or mini group buys. Now, how much did Ergodox cost you shipped to Australia? Well, I bought it in parts, and it cost me about $80 something for the kit, excluding switches and keycaps and the USB connector bit, because I just got an old USB thing and I stripped it, and that's what I did. But if I was to buy a pre-built Ergodox, we're looking in the realm of a couple of $100. Alright, so that's all of my diodes are sitting in now. Try blanks. Forces you to learn. Oh, whoa, man. Hey, Jay Godinez. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming along. Really appreciate it. And I cannot wait to see those patches of yours very soon. Now, all the diodes are in. They're all in the correct orientation. Now, any of you guys, if you spot an issue with what I've done so far, please speak up before I start to actually solder these. That would be terribly, terribly embarrassing if I started soldering them incorrectly. So, yeah, Hushit, that was just for PCB, diodes, and the controller, TRS cables, and stuff like that. Most places, that $200 plus includes your switches, and a lot of those kits also include plates and case. I'm talking $80 was just the PCB, the diodes, controllers, the TRS jacks, no TRS cable either in that. And that is what you get in that kit, that buy. Alright, so I'm just going to duck under the table and plug in my soldering iron, and we'll wait for it to heat up. There we go. Now you just have to apologize my out of focus legs there, but hey. No case? Yes, no case. I went with a very weird brass kind of setup where I just got some brass lug nuts and some washers and some screws, and that was my case. So, no case. Here we go. Let's see how it goes. Yes, indeed. So, let's crack open this roll of solder. Exciting. Just waiting for the soldering iron to heat up. Now, I thought I'd have a bit of fun as well, because what I do have, I'm just going to, is I've got a infrared thermometer. One of those thermo guns that you can zap things with. Where did I put it? There it is. Right, so one of these suckers. So 26 degrees is whatever I just zapped. So let's have a look at the iron. And at the moment, the iron is not reading very hot. Still heating up. 29 degrees. Maybe I can zap it front on. Alright, so it's getting up to 35. Now that's going to take a little while for it to heat up because it's only a little itty bitty 25 watt soldering iron. Nothing spectacular, not very expensive. Yeah. Hey, hi, Trocad. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming along. Haven't seen you for a while. Well, haven't read you for a while. Hope you've been keeping well. No capes. Well, no capes, definitely. Edna would very much disagree. I'll tell you what, everybody's been hanging out for The Incredibles 2 as well. Like, I thought that was happening very soon, and it's kind of just completely disappeared. Well, just going to unspool out some of this 0.71. Look how skinny and itty bitty that is. I've not used 7.1 before. Previously, I've used 1 mil, and I was told I should try maybe something a bit thinner. So we'll see how we go. Now it's still gonna be heating up. What are we looking at the moment? We're looking at 58 degrees. No, 94 degrees. I think it really just depends on where I'm hitting this this tip. 97 degrees. So it's taking its sweet ass time. So what's happening for you guys on the weekend? I suppose if you're already on a Saturday, or if you're late night Friday night somewhere in the US or Europe, what's happening? Nothing? I think one of the strangest things about streaming is always the time delay between what I'm doing and what I see on the board versus what actually happens on the stream. I think there's about a 25 or 30 second delay, which is it always throws me off. And I remember when we first did our live stream, and I hadn't really realized how bad the delay was, and I was just looking around randomly waiting for the feed to actually turn up, and somebody said to us in the comments later that they were cracking up because of the way that I was like looking left and right. It was just like, what am I doing? Hi Andrew, thank you for coming along. Jokan, Taming the Garden. So you're in Japan, right? Where exactly are you in Japan? And you must be in a relatively nice or a big place if you have a garden to tame. And Hashit, early Saturday morning, still in bed. Now you just said that you're in your living room setup. Does that mean your bedroom is the same as your living room? Andrew, you are going to a bachelor party tomorrow. Hey, fantastic. Is it your bachelor party or is it somebody else's bachelor party? 6 Deuces, Friday night, kids are asleep, working on keyboard art. Okay, that's pretty cool. What kind of keyboard art are we talking about? Are you talking like digital art? Are you talking, I don't know, actual painting keycaps or sculpting, or what are we talking about right now? Your brother-in-law's bachelor party. So he's already your brother-in-law or your brother-in-law to be? Or is it, wait, yes, no. If it's your brother-in-law, oh, that one just threw my head in a spin. I'm attending a wedding reception later today for my wife's cousin. Now, because we're in Australia, it's a little bit unusual because they actually came in from Canada, from Calgary. The family's actually really big, and obviously a lot of people couldn't make it to the wedding over there, so they've decided to come over here and have a reception here to say thank you for everybody who's sort of supported them over the years. So we're currently at 130, 140. All right, so we're almost there. Now I believe for this kind of solder, I want to be hitting at least about 180. We'll get there pretty soon. Saitama, 30 minutes from Tokyo. You rent, but the house has a small garden? Fantastic. And already brother-in-law married to his sister. for a few years now. Ah, okay. Great. Oh, well, it's fantastic to hear. Happy families are always an excellent thing. I'll be married now this year for 3 years. I had to really think about that. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but that's okay. My wife is not the sentimental kind. Our first wedding anniversary, she actually completely forgot, which is hilarious because I said to her, "Oh, are we doing anything like on that particular date?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Okay, did you want to do anything?" And she was like, "No." And then I was like, "Oh, okay." And then later on, she was just like, "Oh, I just realized what the date was." So I thought it was actually pretty funny. But, I don't mind at all. Now we're getting up to temperature, which is great. I do have a question for you guys, because if you've done a lot of board building, your advice would be invaluable to me in this situation. I'm not planning to actually solder the diode joints on this side of the board, but I need to tack the diodes so they don't fall out and move for when I do flip the board over. The reason why I don't want to solder from this side is because, especially the angle, it's a little bit challenging to try and solder the tops of each of the diodes along the top row, especially without rejigging a lot of things. Is it okay for me to just tack on one side, say on the bottom, and is that going to be enough to hold it all down before I flip it over? Any thoughts? Comments? Anybody? Bueller? Now, I don't normally tin my tip, but I've been told I probably should, so I'm just giving it a try, and it's kind of working. There we go. Alright. So I tried spreading the legs of the diodes when I built the ergodox, and that kind of didn't work so well. So that's kind of why I wanted to do it this way. The spreading the legs kind of was, disastrous, and the diodes didn't really sit properly. They weren't sitting very flush. And also because I didn't have a helping handle build surface, which meant, they went all over the place. And it resulted in my ergodox actually having not all my switches sit flush, because the bead was actually preventing the bottom of the switches from sitting on the PCB properly, which a little bit embarrassing, but you know what, it was a learning experience, and that's also why I want to do it this way as well. So having it vertically on the top, I can give them a light tack. Woo! That was a little bit bigger than I was hoping for. Just wait for the iron to heat up again, because now I've got like this blob sitting on the end there. That looks good. Experience is key. Fantastic. Really appreciate the moral support, because it's kind of nerve-wracking doing this on stream. I don't know how people do it, but well, we'll get there. Hopefully I'm not leaving the iron on too long and causing a lot of heat damage. And also because of the angle that I'm working at, I can't really get a super great visual on that. Normally I'm a lot closer and overhead as well, so I guess that's one of these things that I'll have to learn. What I do find really cool, actually, for example, if you've ever watched Ski with Pete streams, is he's got his soldering cam, and that is cool as, like, I love solder cam, especially when he does the time lapses of his builds too. It's really nifty. And I don't think I have the means to do that right now, especially because he's got a whole bunch of video capture cards, and he's got some pretty serious setup going on over in his workshop, whereas I've just got a couple of simple, I won't say cheap, because these 910s that I'm using weren't 100% cheap. I bought them second hand, so at least I saved the money that way. He's got 5 cameras on his setup apparently, so now I do apologize if you've got questions at the moment in chat that I'm not seeing, because obviously I'm concentrating on the soldering part, But as soon as I finish this row and I wait for the solder to cool, I'll be able to check out your questions and answer them. Alrighty, almost there for this tacking bit. Alright, fantastic, there we go. So I'm just going to re-tin my tip. Now I probably should get like a little ventilator fan thing, but I kind of realized that it's a bit hard to use a ventilator fan in my space because, well, it's not that I don't have a lot of space. I mean, I don't have a lot of space already, but anywhere that the fan would be positioned and orientated is just going to circulate the solder fumes around the same space. So it wouldn't really make that much of a difference. All right, similar issue, adding a switch on Magiforce due to a different reason. Pete's setup is outrageously awesome. Yeah, it's incredibly awesome. Now, Andrew, if you haven't seen some of my earlier videos about these arms that I've got, this is the quad hands workbench. I've got the longer 16-inch arms on it, but you can get shorter 12-inch and 10-inch arms as well. And they come with these little silicone covers because the alligator clips are actually super, super strong. Yeah, so as Charkan said, I did that video on it. Fume extractor soldering irons are great, just very pricey. Yeah, I can imagine. So now, let's just move the arms off and let's see if any of these diodes fall out. If I've done the job right, I'm going to give them a bit of a jiggle. They seem to be holding fantastic. Now here's the tricky part. How do I do this? I have to go from bottom up, I think, and then I'll have to clip them as I go. Otherwise, I might not be able to, get in between them all. So let's just reclamp. And check out that lovely Gherkin goodness. Alright, now I think I'm going to have to position a little bit closer to the edge. There we go. And then I've got these arms working at quite a high position. It's kind of like almost their maximum height. So I think if I drop it a little bit, I'll be able to get a flatter plane. Yeah, just like that. Alright, so it's properly supported. There we go. Gherkin logo. Fantastic. Alright, get a Yeehaw 936. Clip the row that I'm doing as the tack will keep them in place. Yeah, so I want to solder first the row and then I'll clip them as I go along. Now I have actually had a look at the Yeehaws. I sort of did a lot of research in soldering stations. I did actually want to use I wanted to buy a used Hako, but I missed out on the buy. Oh, well, it was on eBay and obviously I got outbid, so I was very sad and disappointed, but you know, that's just how eBay is. Now this is really interesting because some of these tacks that I've done, the solder's already successfully wicked through, so you can see, well, maybe you can't see it very well because the focus isn't doing a great job of it. But some of these pins, the solder's actually already gone all the way through, which means I shouldn't have to retouch them again. So I'm not going to for the ones that have already wicked through visibly, because I don't want to add extra heat to anything that I don't have to. Okay, so this is going to be obviously a little bit slow going because I'm going to have to clip as I go, make sure my iron's in a safe spot, and clip, clip. Have to make sure I don't lose any of these pieces so that later on the little one's not going to end up picking one of these and eating it or jabbing herself with it. She's at the mobile age now, and also she's not allowed anything cardboard because she tends to chew on it, suck on it until it disintegrates and then tries to eat it, which is very sad for her because she loves tearing paper and cardboard, as most babies do. They kind of got this natural bent to hurt themselves. If you've never had a child, or you've never had to sort of, whoa, this is really cool. You can't see this, but the magnetic feet on the legs that hold this thing are actually sucking up the legs that I'm clipping off. So I don't think I have any fear of them going missing, because they're actually flying off this little black tray that I've got, and they're sticking to the feet of this particular arm over here, which is pretty cool. I hadn't really thought about that, but I guess that's kind of nice. Alright, so let's go on to row 2. Now, I'm obviously just working straight off this reel here, but I've 3D designed a spool holder. I haven't actually printed it here at home yet, because my print bed is a little bit messed up. It's an earlier generation MakerBot 2X, and it has warp issues on the actual bed. So over time, with a lot of heating and cooling cycles, because it's a very thin aluminium bed, the actual plate has warped, which was a little bit sad, but it means I can only do small prints in the center of the bed before prints start to have issues in lifting. Now I can print rafts, but like I've had issues with that as well. And work recently is starting an innovation center, so I'm kind of keen to give them a try at it, because the innovation center is also going to include soldering. Speaking to the guy who's managing the center, I showed him the actual CAD file for it, and he thinks it's pretty cool. So next week, when he's got a bit of time, he's going to give it a print on the Cubicon that we have at work. So yeah, it should be pretty sweet, and then I don't have to worry too much about the spool, because it's going to have its own nifty little holder. Now I'm happy to share that STL as well, if anyone's actually interested in the spool holder that I designed. It's not particularly fancy or anything spectacular, and there's plenty of them out there already on things like Thingiverse as well. 2 rows down. Row 3. Toenail clipper to pinch in a pinch to clip the extra legs off. Yeah, okay. Having the right tools makes everything so much better. Yes, I agree 100%. Put the case together, switch pops out a little bit. Right. Same here, our little guy tries to eat every book in sight. Well, at least you know that if they're eating books, they're kind of ingesting information somehow, right? maybe they're learning through digestion, if that's a thing. I know that people used to say, like, you can learn through osmosis when you sleep, like if you sleep on your textbooks, that kind of thing, especially if you sleep during class on top of your textbooks. Maybe eating them might end up with a similar result. I don't know. One can hope. One can hope. Now, starting to get a little bit further away from me. So it's, oh, my power board just fell off the little stand that I had it on. There we go. That could have been awkward. All right, so that row was pretty quick. We're making good pace here. We're making good pace. The only thing that I sort of read about the Yihuas is there's, like all clones and sort of, I guess, fake versions of soldering stations out there, you're always going to get good and bads. Things that you have to watch out for especially is grounding. So if you do buy a cheap one, and then you don't have any issues with sort of voiding your pseudo warranty, especially if you buy it from eBay or things like that, is to give it a crack open and check that all of the components are properly grounded and that there is actually a grounding strap, bonding strap to your earth. Simply because if you don't and you get a short connection, you could seriously get hurt or even get killed. And that was one of the complaints that I've seen on some of the forums from sort of electronics forums and things like that, when people review and talk about these clones, is that, yeah, some of the really cheap, nasty ones actually aren't grounded properly. So look out for yourself. Make sure that you're going to be safe. Let's see. Learning through digestion. Here's an export at cardboard, carpet, lint, and sand. My little one, she's an expert in bibs, fingers, terry toweling, the wood of her cot. Right now, she's an expert in snot because she's had a cold from teething and she's just blowing goop everywhere. And of course, she's patient 0, which has caused both my wife and I to be sick in the last week or so. So she had a 12-month checkup at the hospital recently, and apparently while she was there, because I wasn't there, she sneezed while the nurse was examining her, and she blew out all this snot that actually completely covered the bottom half of her face, and it made the nurse jump. So good work, dear. Good work. Alrighty. We're just setting a good clip here. Pun intended. Hopefully none of these diodes are going to fall over. Not fall over, fall off. Right now they're watching Madeline. I can hear it in the background. Just talking about kids in general. Tell you what, she's staring at me from the corner of her cot. She can hear me talking, but she has no idea what I'm doing. She's got these toys, these Fisher-Price toys, and they play music and songs and stuff like that. And oh man, having kids' music and songs stuck in your head, I won't say it's a bad thing, but it's funny because I spent an entire day at work with red square in my head. She's got this activity chair. It's got colored shapes on it. And when you press it, it's like red. And then you press it again, it says square. And then it says red square. And then you go again, and then it sings a song. It's like red square, boo 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 boo, red square, peekaboo, 4 corners, 4 sides, just for you. And I had that in my head all day at work. And I got home, and then of course she proceeded to press it, and then I sang along with her. So it's got purple triangle, and it's got green circle as well. But at the moment, she's having a good time playing with a plastic party cup, just crushing the life out of it with her tiny, tiny little hands. Alrighty, we're almost there. This is fantastic. This is looking really neat. I must say, using the 0.71 has certainly done a pretty neat job compared to the 1 mil. Not that I didn't believe the advice, but I was kind of like, well, using the 1 mil probably would have been faster, and it's probably still true. Using the 0.3, as Harshita's just said earlier, is probably also just as good, but yeah, it would probably take a little bit more time, and well, it's always a payoff, right? Because applying heat for longer and then applying more solder, well, you're going to be burning more flux as well, and it takes a bit more time and all that kind of jazz. But I think 7.1 is probably a good compromise size for most of what we do in keyboards. Although I've been told that probably small size is better for SMD as well, which I have yet to try. Now I do have SMD practice kits, which I'll get to at some point, but not today. Okay, there we go. That is the final bead for the diodes. Let's clip, let's let it cool down, and then let's think about the next stage. Ooh. Now the next stage is to actually put the header pins for my Pro Micro in. Now you do have to do this before you put the switches in, because if you do the switches first, you can't actually get in to solder the Pro Micro header. Alright, so what I'm talking about is these rows over here. Where's the Gherkin made? Okay, the Gherkin, I actually don't know where the original design came from. I'm assuming it was probably US or something like that. It's part of the 40% club, so wherever the 40% Club is from, I guess, is where the Gherkin design was made. I don't know where Gentleman Shark actually got these PCBs made from either in his group buy, but what can I say? And Six Deuces, feeling my pain, every toy makes music all the time. Well, that's what off switches are for, and the old excuse of it's out of batteries and we don't have any batteries right now. So here's the Pro Micro, and there's our header pins. So let's crack it open. Let's just tear that packet open, and let's pull those bits out. I'm inclined to put the short header through the actual PCB, and then that way I don't have as much to clip off, and then I'll have more sort of available pin height to distribute heat when I actually solder the Pro Micro itself, which I think is kind of a good game plan right now. Now, I don't really have any means of holding that on with solder at the moment, short of perhaps trying to alligator clip it or something like that on the other side. So I'm going to use trusty masking tape. I read this from somebody else's build, and basically they just taped the buggery out of it so that it wouldn't move and the pins would be sitting okay. Actually, I think they put the controller on it as well, just so that the spacing would be correct, because obviously I've realized by putting that on it, the pins flex. So now the correct orientation for the Gherkin is that it is this way. And the reason for it is because apparently if you solder it on incorrectly like this, you will cause a short somewhere in the way that it's designed. So make sure that it is sitting in that orientation. So let's just get these header pins back on. And then let's get the actual Pro Micro on. Excellent. And then I can tape this whole lot down. Hopefully that'll be okay. Alright, now is that going to get in the way? That will over there. So, alright. Here we go. And now we take our clamps off again. Let's flip it around. Look at that, beautiful. Fantastic. Alright. I think everything's been going quite well, surprisingly. I wouldn't say that I'm a low confidence kind of guy, but it's always a little bit nerve-wracking doing something for the first time, especially because if I stuff this up, well, not only will I make a slight fool of myself on the internet for everybody, but it means I also am out of a PCB and a board and components, which of course nobody likes to have that happen. Hey, Argon, measure twice, check once. Yes, yes, yes. Now, I don't know if I've ever told that story before, but I used to work in an archery shop, and for those who might be familiar with archery and arrows, is that they get cut down to suit the archer's draw length if you're serious about your shooting. And I made that mistake once with some very expensive arrows. And I can tell you, I only made that mistake once in 2 years, and I've cut hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sets of arrows because of that. Now you can't really see it because the pins are sticking vertically up, but all the pins are sitting neatly through that. So let's solder them in. So what had happened when I was actually at the shop was a customer had ordered these arrows, and they were called Blue Streaks. And there's actually two versions of Blue Streaks. There's Blue Streaks and there's Blue Streak Selects. And they have exactly the same packaging. The only difference is actually on the arrows themselves, the Selects have the word select on the shaft. And of course, we at the shop keep them separated in different sort of piles and bundles. Hey Chocon, thank you very much for coming on and checking out the stream. Good luck with the garden, and have a great day. So Yeah, pointy end goes in the front. But what had actually happened was I went to the bucket, the pile that actually had the normal blue streaks, and I picked out a packet, and then I proceeded to cut them. But then when I finished cutting them and I was bundling them back together to hand to the customer, I realized I'd actually managed to cut an entire set of selects, which were a lot more expensive. It was a mistake that I made. I asked the customer, I told him, look, I've made a mistake. It's my fault. There's no pressure on you, but would you be interested in buying slightly better arrows? If not, that's not an issue. I'm just going to go and cut your other set, but that's the reason why there's this short delay. And they were like, no, I can't afford it. So I ended up buying a set of arrows. Never made that mistake again. It's funny that you say the pointy end goes out front. In really expensive target arrows, there is actually correct orientation. If you don't cut from the correct end, the actual arrows, they don't flex properly. They've got a dynamic spine built into them. And it has actually happened with other people in the shop as well. Now, I just keep knocking the microphone because it's so close. Those become specials. Yeah, the problem with specials though is they sit around a long time. And with really expensive arrows, you can't really afford to do that. It's a very expensive exercise. So I basically bought them. It's all right. I turned them into a set of arrows for my wife because thankfully they did actually suit my wife. In fact, I actually had to cut extra length off them to suit my wife. So yeah, left-handed arrows. Now you might actually laugh at that, but left-hand arrows do exist because the way that you actually fletch the arrows can impact the spin, which is dependent upon the way that the arrow leaves the bow. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of doesn't matter, but at the same time, it does. You want arrows to come out and correct themselves as fast as possible, and so having the right amount of vane offset, it's typically around 1 degree, is really important. And if the arrow's coming out of a left-hand bow versus a right-hand bow, it actually spins in slightly different directions. So if you don't get that set up right, you can actually cause your arrows to fishtail and porpoise, which means the arrows kick out funny because they're trying to spin the opposite direction, and then they correct themselves. But if the vanes are actually fletched in the wrong orientation, you're actually spinning the arrows deliberately, causing drag, and that you don't want. You don't want to do it at all. Oh man. Okay, so I didn't check my board properly, but over here, and you can't really see it until I move this, I just realized one of these diodes is sitting massively higher than the others. And even though I had tacked it, it had actually moved. Now, I'm just going to unclamp it. And this is why you probably should check stuff very carefully. And we'll just turn it so you can see what I'm talking about. Look at that sucker. Look at that. How horrible is that diode looking? Oi, get back into focus. Alright, I can't be bothered trying to... Now, I don't think that's going to impact on the switch, but I'm just going to check it anyway. Let's put a switch in, and we're good. Whether that's actually going to be a problem with the plate or not, it'll be tricky, because... Oh, that's... yeah. I didn't, only because the tacking seemed to work so well. Every other diode is actually sitting really nice. It was only that one diode that was not playing. So what we're going to do now, because obviously the show must go on, I could try and desolder that, but you know what? It seems to be sitting okay, and I think it'll have enough clearance for the plate. We're just going to go ahead and continue without changing anything. Let's take the tape off. Let's take the Pro Micro off. There you go. Back you go. And we're going to start putting in switches through the plate. So I'm just going to clamp that first. There's the plate. Make sure the orientation is correct. Now my plate actually came with a bit of a blemish. This is the good side. If I flip it over, you kind of see there's a bit of a discoloration over here. I'm not quite sure what happened, but if I hold it up and you see the reflection, it's kind of slightly different around that switch. Now, it's just cosmetic. It's PCB board. Who really cares, right? But you know what? Just for the sake of it, I am going to flip it around so that it's on the underside, and that way it'll sit correctly. And that's... oh, sounds like the little one just chucked her little remote control toy, her Sesame Street toy. Let's make sure that our switch orientation is correct, because obviously these switch holes have to match what we're doing. So that's the right side that I want. I want it that way. The corner one is going to be upside down like that. So let's mount that in that way. The corner one is upside down, and upside down. So let's pop all four in. Now I'm using Cherry MX screens in this particular build just because that's what I had spare from building my GH60. I do actually have Gatoron greens, and I've got some Gatoron blues as well, but I thought, you know what, I might as well use the OG greens because, heck, why not? Why not? I do have a Let's Split build that I haven't put together yet, that I will at some point, and I've actually got some Cherry MX tactile grays that I'll be putting into them. So that'll be interesting because they've got the same sort of activation as these greens, but they're tactiles. So let's see if I can get this lined up. That's through there. Those pins are through there. Okay, and let's pop them in. Pop it in, pop it in, pop it in. Alrighty, so my corners are pushed in and they seem to be relatively pin. That's another thing to obviously watch out for. Now I'm actually going to clamp the plate because the plate is now on the underside, and that way it'll stop anything from falling out accidentally. That pin's just going to straighten up. Color coordinated, yeah. Heat each side individually and push the push each lead down. You know what? I've actually got them in, and just for the sake of it, you know, because we're live anyway, I'm going to show you that the clearance of it is fine. Look at that. It just makes it under the plate. So no worries at all. Even though it was higher, it's not impacting on its function. And I can't imagine the extra length that it's got is going to cause any changes in its resistive properties, I hope. Andrew says, I have a Prionic with greys. They felt pretty good, but I felt like some of the switches were a little inconsistent. Need double shot greens. Lubing help the greys. That's a really common complaint that people have about Cherry switches, is inconsistency, whereas supposedly the Gatorons are a lot better. I don't think I've got fingers that are delicate enough for this, and you know, I've only been doing mechanical keyboards now for a couple of years. I'm just going to move the microphone because I keep knocking it. All right. And people talk about, like, you know, stem wobble and like how gritty stuff feels. And I'm like, I must have the most insensitive fingers in the world, because a lot of these issues that people are talking about, I've just not experienced. Maybe I'm just not sensitive. I can feel like the difference between a new black and a vintage black, because recently somebody sent me a vintage black and I was like, okay, I can definitely feel the difference. But hey, what can I say? I haven't really got any other sort of heavy tactiles to compare the grays to, so I won't know if they feel bad. In terms of inconsistency between them, you know, I've pulled a couple out and I've just clicked them on my fingers, and I won't know until I complete the board as well either. Now, you've traded that board for a FC660C a few weeks ago. Hey, I can tell you right now, Andrew, good choice. Fantastic choice. Of course, anybody who knows this channel and my videos will know that I love my FC660C and I favor it over my HHKB. But you know what? That's okay if you don't like it and you have other form factors and boards you like, because that's part of personal choice, part of individual, you know, love for whatever it is that you want to use. Alrighty, we're almost done for the four corners, the pillars of this board. I would like to be able to try a 980 layout, because so I don't actually know what happened, but it seems like I temporarily lost my stream connection. So yeah, okay, cool. We're back online. Not quite sure what happened there. It seems to happen every so often, but you know what? That's just how really bad internet in Australia is. Now, you're on video. The two helped me immensely when I was trying to decide between the two. Fantastic. Been waiting impatiently for the periodic to draw up. Okay, great. So I've finished soldering the 4 switches in the corner, and hopefully now that means the plate is pretty much fixed and locked on. I can't believe like how crazy small and thin this actual build is. It's pretty awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. Okay, now let's quickly pop in the rest of the switches. Now it's just a lot easier if I do that off camera naturally, so we're going to do that. I'm not much of a switch plate person normally. If you've actually seen both my Ergodox and my GH60, you'll see that they're floating keycat, floating star, and that's only because, like, I don't know, having plates is not a necessity. It's not a necessity of life. It's nice. It can support the board. I don't hit hard enough that I worry about flex as well on the keyboard compared to some other people. Maybe that's part of, you know, my slow typing speed, that kind of thing. But this is actually going to be the first keyboard that I've built that uses a plate. It's kind of, well, it wasn't necessary either, except if I didn't go with that option, then I would have had to get a second PCB in the group buy, and I thought, why not? Alrighty, we're inserting switches, Mad line still going on in the background. If you've never seen Mad Line, you're not missing much, but it's not a bad little, you know, kids show. Mad Line, oh Mad Line. Oh, hello.
You can't touch that.
And this is why babies are not allowed on build videos, because they want to grab and touch everything, and especially when there's hot irons involved and there's lead. Oi. Hey. What are you doing? Thank you, Argon. Happy birthday from Argon. Oh, look at that smile. Have I tried Gatostotles? I actually have one Aristotle. I have not tried a Gatostottle. I have an Aristotle, and it's right here in my little 6-switch tester, and that's what it sounds like. I have not modded it because I wanted to keep it stock for the purposes of just sound comparison. If I had more, then it's probably something that I could try and compare and play around with, but obviously, you know, that's not something that easily comes my way. No lead day. I actually prefer leaded solder because it's just so much easier to work with. I had a little tube of lead-free solder that I used to build my Ergodox with, and re-wetting it to sort of desolder my mistakes was an absolute pain, and it took a lot more heat using the same iron that I have down here to actually work it compared to leaded solder, which I used for my GH60, which I borrowed off my dad. So leaded all the way. Leaded all the way. Now, of course, there's always the debate about leaded and unleaded being healthy for you and all that kind of stuff. Contrary to the myth, when you solder, you don't vaporize lead. Lead has a really high vapor point. What you do though is you splutter lead. So, wait, get out. Wait, come on. Why are you not sitting properly? What you're actually seeing in terms of the smoke is not lead, it's just the rosin. It's just rosin core if you've got rosin core stuff, which most... Oh, come on. All right, I'm just going to have to force you in, aren't I? Hopefully I'm not going to snap anything. Are you in properly? Come on. There we go. All right. It's just going to have to flex that top plate a little bit just to make sure they all clip in and seat right, because some of these guys aren't seating in properly. All right. Sorry, got distracted there. Yeah, so the lead-free for those I'll give away. Yeah, so the whole thing about lead-free and the RoHS, which is the reduction of hazardous substances standard, which was brought into place, is for commercial purposes. And that's also because of contamination of e-wastes recycling. So if you're only doing homework and you're not actually in a commercial venture, you don't have to use lead-free. And also because commercial vendors, when they actually make equipment, they can use lead-free because the machines are well calibrated and they heat up properly. They use, soldering ovens and stuff like that. Whereas if you're at home and you're doing soldering like we are, it's far superior to use leaded product. The only thing that you just have to be careful of is naturally is to clean your work area or your hands if you get a lot of splutter. Now, thankfully, with this 0.71 stuff that I've been working with, it's actually been pretty good. It hasn't really been spluttering very much, and the amount of rosin in it is very little because of how small the actual solder diameter is. So, not really an issue. We're almost there. Oh, I hate snapping these things in because they can be really stiff and can hurt your fingers a bit. I've got delicate, office hands. I used to have much tougher fingers when I did a lot more manual labor work in my younger days, but over time and lots of washing the dishes has softened them up. I don't use moisturizer, though my wife tells me I should. But you know what? That's just how it goes. Almost there. Lead-free is a pain in the ass for hand soldering. Surface mount, but doable. Yeah, so I'm kind of daunted by doing surface mount, but I do want to try it. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that. All right. Look at that. How gorgeous. How gorgeous does that look? It's all green. Now, I'm not an LED kind of guy. Otherwise, I probably would have put in green LEDs to make a true Gherkin. The one true Gherkin, if anybody watches Rick and Morty. But you know what? I think that looks pretty bloody cool. If I had clear keycaps, I would actually probably put them on as well, because that would really complete the build and give it a bit of character, I think. There we go. Just get that in. Alrighty. Let's lower that so it's workable again. Yeah, absolute beauty. Now my soldering wire. Now that's been heating for a while now because of me clipping the switches in, obviously. So let's try the old heat gun, the thermo, and we're reading. What are you reading? 148 on the casing, and then on the tip it's reading 165. Okay, and then on the handle it's reading 33. So the handle's getting a bit warm. Now let's just switch off the front facing again, and that way we can just have a nice clean stream. Oh, I'm just going to tin that with some fresh solder. I don't actually have one of those brass cleaning scrubby thingies. I've been told I probably should get one because it'll clean the tips quite well, but you know, there are costs that one will acquire things over time. Now, if you haven't hit like on this stream yet, please do. If you do check out this stream and you're not subscribed yet to our channel, please hit subscribe. Would really appreciate that. At the time that I started this stream, we were at, I think, 478 subscribers, something like that. Now, I do want to remind everyone that at 500 subscribers, we will be doing another giveaway for a 2016 Movember keycap. Limited edition because obviously it was designed and created for Movember 2016, which means it'll never be casted again. So if you want a chance to get hold of that, of course, stay tuned for when we hit 500 subscribers. Now, the journey to 500 subscribers has been really interesting because this YouTube channel only started in January this year, and essentially we've been picking up roughly 100 a month or so. According to YouTube, statistically, it's actually 81 a month. But you know what? I'm just going to round that up. It's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. Having a good time and enjoying putting out content. We get a couple of, dislikes, and we get some sort of spam comments as well. But, every channel does. And in a way, it's kind of nice that you do get it because it means you're getting somewhere. Spammers don't spam channels unless they can be bots, but yeah, and trolls, that kind of thing too. It just means you're getting to a point where you've become a target for someone to actually do that to your channel. Now, of course, because we're such a small channel and we do have ads on our videos, it's one way of supporting our podcasting costs. I said earlier in Reddit that it's not nice to always have to ask for donations to run our podcasts, and it's not. We pay a monthly fee for our podcasting hosts, so our podcasts can be available all the time, ad-free. The entire back catalog, which goes all the way back to August last year, is available at any time that you choose to listen to it. All right, so if you do want to support us, you can head over to our shop on Teespring and get some merchandise. All profits, of course, from that go towards supporting our podcast hosting costs. Or if you feel like just donating, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, packet of chips or something like that, some lollies, then we've also got our PayPal Me link, which is in the descriptions, or it's on the front page of our website, which is www.theboardpodcast.com. And of course, all of your support is more than welcome and really appreciated. Now, we do have, giveaways like Kevin and the board keycaps and stuff like that. And of course, those kind of things do cost money, both in shipping as well as actually getting the items. And if we have donations and profits that go above and beyond our podcast hosting costs, that's what that stuff gets funneled into as well. Alrighty. Hey, it's Mendez. Thank you for coming along. Wasn't sure if you were going to make it because I know you are a very, very busy man. Very busy man. Now, for those who are not very familiar with Mendez, Mendez is Tay Keyboards, one of the big names in our community. He has an insane channel, does some really amazing reviews, and yeah, if you don't know Tay Keyboards, make sure you head over and check out his channel as well because he does some pretty cool stuff. And Argon, you listen to the podcast on the ride to work. Yeah, I get a lot of people telling me that. So we have a lot of community generated content on Reddit. Now, I'm primarily just a Reddit person because with life, the universe and everything, it's really hard to keep on top of everything, especially across multiple platforms. So I don't really geek hack. I don't really Authority. I probably should because it would greatly increase our community engagement and sort of viewership, listenership, that kind of stuff. But of course, anybody who wants to help promote us on those other channels are more than welcome to as well. And because of that, I get a lot of people who tell me that compared to say like Top Clack, which is a great sort of YouTube video, Twitch stream, sorry, not YouTube video, but it is posted afterwards on Man of Interest's channel, is that people like the podcast because they can listen to it wherever they're going, however they're traveling. You know, we get people who tell us that they listen to the podcast while they do the dishes. We get people who tell us that they listen to the podcast while they're cycling to class. You know, we get people who listen to the podcast when they're in the car on the weekend with the kids going to sport. That kind of stuff. For example, Quakums, one of the hosts from Top Clack, he actually says that he listens to the board when he's building keyboards, which it's great. You know, he doesn't have to concentrate too hard because the stuff that we talk about most of the time isn't super serious. And it's community stuff, so, and you can always pause, rewind, replay if you miss a section because you're concentrating on what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. The video format of Top Clack is great, but I think it requires a little bit more concentration because there is that video. Now, naturally, of course, you can just listen to it as well, but you kind of lose some of what's going on because you're not seeing, you know, facial expressions or graphics that they put up and stuff like that. All right, we're almost there. Oh, feeding that in. There's a discourse channel as well. A discourse channel. What's the discourse channel? Argon? Zangetsu? Oh, Tenzangetsu finally got Wi-Fi to work at home. Well, welcome back. If that meant that you had dropped out for a while. Oh, at work. Missed the majority of the build. Well, you know, the best part is you can always go back and watch this on demand later because it will be available on the channel, of course. We're still going. It's still, you know, stuff that's happening here. The hardest part, the scariest part is actually coming right up, which is soldering the Pro Micro. All right, I think that's all the switches. It looks, I think I did an okay job. Every switch looks like it's done. And none of them seem to have a really bad kind of bead on them. Any of these look like cold solder joints? Anyone? No? Okay. The MetKeys Discord. Yeah, so there's MetKeys Discord. There's also for Australians. There's the Australian MetKeys Discord as well. There's a couple of different Facebook groups out there. So I'm part of the Australian Facebook group, Keybs, AU Mechanical Keyboards, which is really great. Which is of course where the event page is for the Sydney meetup as well. Can never keep up with MetKeys. What goes in the IC pad near the center? So you're talking about that thing there. I believe that is required for LEDs or something like that. I've seen on the build guide they put that in as well as the resistors, but because I'm not going for LEDs, I don't think I actually require that. Now, if I do require it, at least it's in a nice, open, easy area to access. Then I'd have to acquire the IC and solder that on. But I don't believe I need it. Now, I was talking to Jolly Green Giant, who I believe is actually Tenzangetsu here, that is correct, right? I don't need that for a non-LED build because I'm building pretty much off his verbal guide. So, hey Andrew, thank you very much for coming along for what you can on the stream. I hope you have a great time at that bachelor party. In a couple of hours myself, I'll have to get ready and head out too for the wedding reception. So yeah, hopefully we'll both have a great time tonight. And thank you very much for wishing me best of luck on the rest of this build. Now, here is the Pro Micro. It's tiny little thing, and it's a 5 volt and a 3.3 volt right there. And of course, doing the right thing, we're going to pop it in the correct orientation, face down, not face up. Now, this is also why I did that taping before, because See how it's not sitting in 100% easy, and it's nice and snug. Look at that. I can get that all the way down. And have I got something preventing that? Okay, so the some of those switch bits are actually contacting and preventing me getting that all the way down. Now, I don't think that's a major issue as long as I've got enough clearance later for my base, because I can either clip it or not. What do you reckon? Do I try and clip that? Careful with that. Let's just clip the top of that, shall we? Alrighty, there we go. It's clipped. And down we go. Alright. You know what? Whoa, almost burnt myself there. Got to be very careful around irons. So what I've got here is a packet from eBay, which has actually got my standoffs. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to check that the height is good before I sort of go any further, because if the height is no good, then I will have to trim down all of that under that space. So, oh, just bashed my knee. Alright, so there's the standoff. And you know what? I think we're good. I think we're good. Easy. Easy peasy. Easy peasy. Okay. So, time to do the final bit of soldering. And yeah, so Jolly Green Sangetsu said, yeah, he's trimmed the switches personally. Alright, now when I did this on my ergodox, I was so nervous because I was afraid of overheating everything and burning the crap out of the controller. I can tell you right now, I'm just as nervous. I'm not less nervous just because I've done the ergodox. So it's kind of like practice, 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 right? When I used to compete in archery a lot, I would get so nervous in competition. And even though I competed for years and years and years, it didn't get any better. And one of the coaches that I had sort of gave me a really good advice about nerves is whenever you go into competition, you're always going to be nervous, but nerves disappear very quickly. They disappear very quickly, and you get into the rhythm of shooting and competing and scoring. So the only way that you can get rid of nerves is just by shooting a lot of arrows during the actual competition. You always get half an hour warm up in major competitions. So instead of shooting a very small number of arrows like most people do just for a light warm up, I would just shoot an absolute bucket load of arrows. I would put down as many arrows as I possibly could in half an hour, and that would get rid of my nerves. And it really worked. But the downside, of course, to doing that is you get tired very quickly because you just put down a lot of arrows that you didn't have to. But you know what? You can train for that. You can get physically fit for that. You can get physically strong for that. I had really a fantastic opportunity many years ago. Whoa, okay. That one's not wicking very well on that side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that around so I can actually access it from the other side. To shoot with some of the best in the world, with Olympic medalists. So I was in the US in 2011 trying to qualify for the Australian Olympic team, and I got to shoot with Jake Kaminsky and Brady Ellison and Jesse Broadwater and Heather Cole and all of those guys, Crispin Duenas, and oh, it was such an experience. And you know what? I found out that the Americans, they do some really cool stuff because in a competition, you only have 144 scoring arrows. But they train themselves to shoot 180 arrows as if they're competing. They score 180 arrows because the difference between 144 arrows, which is what is actually scored in comp, to 180 arrows is those extra arrows in warm-up. You want to put down every one of those arrows as if they're a scoring arrow. And that was a really great learning experience, because they were telling me that some of the guys in their top teams, they shoot like 250 plus 300 arrows a day. And when they come to competition and they're only shooting 180 arrows, it's like a walk in the park. They're just like, whatever. It's a light day for me because it's only half my normal training load. So yeah, definitely something to consider. Now, of course, how does that relate to building keyboards? Well, it just means I need to build a lot more keyboards, right? And then I won't get nervous in soldering and building keyboards. The same philosophy applies to anything else in life, really. For example, if you are doing interviews, if you're looking for a job and you're interviewing and you're nervous about interviews, the more interviews you do, the less nervous you're going to get, because you get experienced. You get, you know the kind of questions that they're going to ask you. You know the kind of responses that you can give, and so on and so forth. So I'm basically the protagonist in a manga. I don't know about that, if anyone would ever want to draw a manga about my life. Adafruit suggests pushing the pins into a solderless breadboard to hold the pins in alignment for soldering narrow multi-pins. Okay, well that's pretty cool. I don't know how that would help in this situation though, because if you breadboard it, how are you going to get to the pins? I don't know. Wax on, wax off, indeed. Paint the fence. Paint the fence. Now, I think that actually completes all of the soldering requirements that I need for this board. Now, I've just realized that the back side of my Pro Micro is actually sitting higher than the front, which is what I measured against. Another rookie mistake that you probably don't want to make. It's good that I'm making it, so if you do build a Gherkin in the future, you won't make that mistake. Now I'm just going to sit that, and am I going to get the clearance I need? I think I'm good. I think I'm good. All right. So I'm just going to let that cool down for a little bit, and then I'm going to unplug my iron, because I don't think there's any more soldering I need to do. Is that correct? I think the soldering's all done. Chalk iron, yes, I think the soldering is all done. So I'm going to unplug the iron, and then I can just chill the tip out. Chill the tip out. Just let it cool down a little bit. Plug it in. Black magic smoke. Oh, I love black magic smoke. When I was doing the reliability centered maintenance course a long time ago, and we had these two guys come and teach it. These two American guys, ex-Navy sailors. And one of them used to be a nuclear technician on the aircraft carriers. And he was like, oh, there's two things that you learn being a Navy tech on nuclear platforms. One is you can never put the black magic smoke back in. And two, nobody ever wants to see an unexpected sunrise. And a few people kind of didn't get that reference about the unexpected sunrise, but everybody else who did was kind of like, yeah, nobody wants an unexpected sunrise. All right, I think, is that sufficiently cooled? Okay, so let's try and clip these nice and low. Oh, that one doesn't want to clip. That because I'm trying to clip the one in front of it. All right. top row nearly done. Okay. There's a bit of a light mess. Make sure none of those bits are... And then bottom row. Do I have flush diagonal cutters? You're seeing the cutters I have, so the answer is no. Alrighty. I think that's it. That is it. So let's just take that off. We'll upside down it and get rid of any of the other fragments that are still on it. Yeah, these pins are really heavy duty thick. And then of course I'm just going to give it a light brushy. Okay, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Look at all that. That's just all magnetically inclined to the base of the arm, which is pretty cool. Let's move this out of the way because obviously we're not going to be needing any of this for the moment. Let's move that out of the way. And now we're down focused onto the desktop. I don't actually have any firmware, so I'm not quite sure about what's going to happen when I plug it in. Does anyone know what's going to happen when I plug it in? Jolly Green Giant? Hey, Six Deuces, thank you very much for checking the stream. Really appreciate you coming along. And GGCADC, yes, it's actually Saturday afternoon here in Sydney. So I've got cherry greens in them. I decided to go with the cherry greens because of the black housings instead of my Gatoron greens with the clear housing. I'm saving those tactile greys for the Let's Split. Now I do actually have... Do I have an appropriate cable for this plugged in somewhere? Let's move the mess around. I've got... Is that the right type of socket? Okay, so I've got a USB cable. I actually don't know anything about that. I hadn't prepared for that. I was only preparing to do the actual solder and assembly, not the hex, because I haven't actually worked out what I wanted to do with that. But if I plug it in and it goes bang, or the stream suddenly disappears, we know something went wrong really, really badly. So here we go. Oh, I got a ding, 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 and I got a light, and I got another light. So nothing went bang. It all seems to be all lit up. So I think that is actually a success. What do you think, Jolly? Is that good? Is that what I'm supposed to have? I actually don't know. It's actually not a teensy GGCADC. It's a Pro Micro. So very similar, but slightly different. Only a Pro Micro. Okay, so I'm going to unjack that for the moment. And just for completeness of the physical build, I'm going to put these screws and standoffs in. I know that I probably need to access this again for the purposes of actually flashing the firmware, but I don't want to do that on the stream right now simply because I'm not ready and set up for it. So what I do have is I've got my standoffs and I've got my screws here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find screwdrivers. Now is that going to be too big for that? Maybe. We got a smaller. Yeah, I've got a size 0 over here. So I've got the size 0. It's just going to pan out that way. No way to tell until something is flashed on it. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to save that for another day then. Let's get a couple of these screws out, and then we'll see how we go. You know what? I've done too good a job at taping this shut. Come on. I love masking tape. It's cheap, it's tacky, it's effective for a lot of things. You can write on it. It's relatively environmentally friendly because it's made out of, you know, paper backing that is recyclable. Okay, it's I think you need 16 standoffs and 32 screws for a Gherkin build of this nature. So let's just start off with just a couple, and then we'll go from there. Open sandwich case. You can shove a screwdriver into it later to reset it if you have a spare Pro Micro on hand. To which out. Yeah. See, I'm not very good with this whole firmware flashing, QMK, TMK stuff. I'll probably just put a default layer on it first, and then I'll work out if I can use it as a macro pad somehow. Because I'm not really a coder or a programming kind of dude, which is why this kind of stuff is, yeah, slightly out of my normal comfort zone. So, let's start in the corner. We'll put the screw through, hold it in place, and there we go. You know what? I think this screwdriver head's a bit small for it because it's not tightening. There we go. So the big one after all. Yeah, James. Yeah, that would be really great. How did your OS go? Did you get that sorted out? And for those who are watching, if you're not on the Australian MK Discord and you are Australian, yeah, let us know, and we can always send you an invite to it. As well as, of course, the Australian Mech Keys Facebook group. You got it installed finally. Great to hear. Now, these are 12mm standoffs, and they are M2 standoffs and screws, which is what you kind of need for this build. Don't want too many of them zipping around, do I? The Idiot's Guide is great for simple layouts and setup. Then you can figure out fancy schmancy stuff later on. I love Idiots and Dummies guides. Somebody really needs to make, like, you know, the Dummies Guide to building MKs. I still want to do a hand wire. I haven't actually done a hand wire yet because I just haven't got the components and whatnot ready for it. I do have a candidate now that I've kind of killed my Magis Touch 1, so I'd be attempting a hand wire on a 100% full-size board, which is pretty ambitious, but you know what, go big or go home, right? And most of the time I'm already home, so I can't really go anywhere but go big. Does a Pro Micro take QMK? It can take QMK. Harshit, did I flash the firmware? No, I have not flashed it yet. I just wanted to complete the physical build before I start getting into the firmware because knowing me, that could take a while. I haven't actually downloaded any of the X loaders or the AVR stuff and everything else like that. Good question. The reset button is on the inside, but what you can do is you can actually short 2 of the pins to do it, which is what I believe is a way that you can do it. And you can also supposedly just, you can do it from the bottom. You can just jump the pins from the bottom. So they say that you just have to get a bit of wire and then just jump between, I think, 5 and 8, whichever one they are, and then that will be the way to do it. Helpful to test the micro before soldering. Yeah. You know, it is, but for the sake of entertainment and learning how to build, it doesn't really matter. I mean, half the fun is the anticipation of putting all this work in and then finding out that you got to rebuild it again or not. And to be honest, it's actually not that bad, because I just have to desolder the Pro Micro and then solder a new one on, kind of thing, and that is far less amount of work compared to building this entire keyboard from scratch. So you joke, actually, GGCADC, but that is actually my intent. I am wanting to turn this into a form of a macro pad, probably because for work purposes, daily driver, I'm a full-size keyboard user. I work from home from time to time, which is also why I primarily use the full size. And I did talk earlier about that I would like to be able to try a 980 layout, because even though I use the full size, it's primarily because of the numpad. I do a lot of, that one doesn't seem to want to work. A lot of numbers work. And I do use the page up, page down, delete, home and end. I don't ever use the insert key though, so I can definitely live without the insert key. But if the 980 can give me the functionality that I need for the most part, then I probably wouldn't mind going to that layout as well, especially because you can get the FC980C, which is pretty cool. We're almost halfway there in putting these things on. So yeah, any of you guys have any sort of comments or criticisms or things that you want to tell us about on the board? Feedback. We always ask for feedback, but we don't always get feedback. I suppose people are kind of a bit shy in wanting to openly give feedback, but you can always message us. You can always message us on Reddit. You can message us on, Slack or Discord if you see some of us on, depending on what groups you're in. You can message us here on YouTube and just, tell us what you like, what you don't like. Tell us, what suggestions you might have for content or people that you might want us to try and get hold of to talk to, so on and so forth. We don't have as much sort of star pulling power compared to TopClack does with their vast array of incredible guests that they've had. But, it doesn't mean that we can't put out feelers and hope that someone will actually come to the party. So, yeah. What do I need? I need 2 more on this side. That is... nearly there on one side. Now, I don't have keycaps ready for this either. I was going to put some grab bag keycaps on it, so it's going to be a vomit keyboard, which of course will ruin the looks. But I suppose the other option is I'll just type on blank switches. No keycaps at all, just for shits and giggles. Of course, with my ghetto docs style, I can label whatever I want on them as well, on blanks, just a bit of magic tape and marker. But and because it's programmable, it means I can do that. I can put on a bit of tape, I can set the markers, and then I can be like, you know what, today I want it in this layout, tomorrow I want it in this layout, and all I have to do is just pull off that bit of tape and stick another bit of tape on it. It's easy, piece of cake. Alrighty, we're in the home stretch. The only problem with working with screws is they just tiny little screws. I mean, big screws not so much. They have a tendency to go everywhere if you're not careful. So, and because this is brass, they're not going to stick to my screwdriver. Although I don't think the small one's got a magnetic tip on it. My big one does though. Alrighty. Whoop. I don't know if anyone's going to get triggered as well, because I know that when I did another video when I was putting my HHKB back together, somebody was very upset that I didn't backspin my screws, so I could have cross-threaded them. That said, I was kind of like, well, you don't really have to worry too much about it on the HHKB for most part because it's plastic, and the actual screws they seat in really well, really easily. So, yes, the podcast mug. Gadgeballs actually saw it yesterday and was just like, I think I need a mug. It's pretty good. I think it's actually pretty cheap. It's affordable to have custom printed mugs these days compared to a lot longer. As a matter of fact, two of the teams that I work with at work, we've all got like team logos. Their team leads actually got a bunch of mugs printed with their logos and gave them out to their teams, sort of like as team morale and whatnot. It's pretty cool. They had them done on, I think, like Cafe Press or something like that, Vistaprint, and yeah, they got them within a week of ordering it and broke it out at the end of last year and was just like, hey, Merry Christmas, guys. Here's, you know, a mug to say thank you for being part of the team and working so hard. Sadly, my team didn't have anything like that because there's only 3 people in my team and no team lead. So, floating team. Vinyl stickers on your computer. Well, if you want stickers, the Teespring shopfront, we don't have stickers, but you can go to Redbubble and look up the Board Podcast, because we do actually have stickers on that site instead. So if you are after stickers, head over to redbubble.com, look up the Board Podcast, and yeah. You do it for all 3 of you. Well, I don't have the money for that kind of thing for my team, because those guys who got it done, it was paid for by their actual manager. The team leads went to their manager and went, can we get money for this? And it got approved. Whereas, yeah, our team doesn't have that kind of funding. I'm not sure what the stickers are from Redbubble. You'll have to have a look. It's not something that I kind of remember at the top of my head, unfortunately. But, yeah. They come in a couple of different sizes, I think, so you should be able to maybe find something that's to your liking. Almost there. Almost there. Yeah, you know, $15 a mug, cheapo company, but if you do that for 5,000 people, it all adds up, right? That's the kind of thing, because then people go, well, how come they got a mug? And then, you know, yeah, then people start crying, it's unfair and all that kind of stuff. So managers, they have to make tough decisions sometimes, and I respect that. You know, it's not always fun and games. And there you go. I think that is it. Just going to give them a light quarter turn, if I can, on each one of these, just to finish off. Of course, I probably shouldn't tighten these too hard, because I'm just going to have to take them off again when I flash it, or as Jolly Green said, whoa, that one didn't go in. Why didn't you go in? There we go. I might be able to just stick a screwdriver in or something like that and shorten. I don't know if I have a lot of clearance, but I'll just show you. Look at that angle that I'm talking about. It's pretty messy, isn't it? But you know what? It's all right. It fit. It's actually not contacting the base plate, which is great, but a little bit touch and go there. So there you go. Now, I actually don't know how long this stream's been going for. Let me have a look at my other window. 1 hour and 51 minutes. There you go. So in under 2 hours, plus all the faffing around and talking that I've done, we've been able to build a Gherkin from start to finish. We've soldered 60 diode connections. We've soldered 2 rows of the Pro Micro. We've soldered 60 switch connections. And then we've put on 16 standoffs and 32 screws. All in the space of less than 2 hours, which I think is pretty darn good. Yeah, so let's just do a very quick, I'm just gonna put these bits away first so I don't lose any more screws and standoffs. Seal that up, screw, and go back inside the packet. And then we can do a little bit of a pseudo sound test. Now, I do say pseudo sound test only because there's no keycaps on it, but we can at least revel and enjoy the glory that is MX screens and clickies. So let's just tape that up. We'll put that away into the packet, off to one side. All right, so let's get the microphone. Oh, clunk, my bad. And here we go. That's actually quite soft and gentle without a keycap. Now let's get a keycap. It's just a random OEM. Let's put that baby on. There we go. And just for you, Argon, there's the clicks. Look at that. How sweet and tiny is that board? It's just enough for your little pinky to go out to one side, and then of course a bit of fun and games. So I think, wow, those stems are nice and tight. There's my keycap puller. Off it comes. Okie dokie. Okie dokie. There we go. There we have the completed build of a Gherkin. I've got to find my mouse cursor. There we go. Let's switch back over. All done. All done. Here it is. 30 key. 10 columns, 3 rows, 3 bits of PCB board, some solder, and 2 hours. Hopefully, I'll be able to get this firmware business sorted at some point in the near future, and then I'll turn it into a macro pad and have a bit of fun, taking it to work, you know, show it off and make people go, what? More keyboards? And put it on top of my cherry desk mat as well for people to be like, you're such a nerd. But hey, that's what we do, that's what we enjoy. And that's what we like to have fun with in this community. Now, I do want to give some shout outs, of course. So thank you to Jolly Green Giant, who has been in this chat, because he's the one that's facilitated this buy for me, as well as the actual quad hands that I used today for getting this build done, the arms and clamps. Really appreciate it. Love you heaps. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you guys. You know, there's currently 14 people watching right now. So thumbs up. Thank you, thank you, thank you for checking out the stream. And of course, if you haven't yet, I would love it if you hit like. And if you haven't subscribed, also to subscribe to our channel. As I said earlier, at the time that I started doing this, I think we're at 478 subscribers. And at 500 subscribers, we're going to give another one of the Movember keycaps away. So the last one was a green one. Let me just bring up my little bag of the Movember keycaps, which I've got over here. Still left over. So let's just randomly pull one out. And so the next one, which is going to be our 500 cap giveaway, is, it's going to be Mr. Lavender. So this one actually has Australian lavender embedded inside it. It's probably not showing up very well because I don't have a pressure pot. So when I made these, I don't get water clear casts without pressure pots, but there is some purple and some floating bits and pieces inside it. So we'll do that for the 500 subscriber giveaway, which hopefully will be soon. Now, Hashid has asked, where can he buy this? You'll have to find the Gerber files. I believe that they are available freely. You just have to find the GitHub for it. And there may be some group buys for them floating around as well. Just throw up a post on Reddit and I'm sure somebody will basically say, yeah, I've got a spare, or yeah, you know, I'm going to run one very soon, that kind of thing. I believe there was some talk by somebody about that they were going to do maybe like a revision 2 of the Gherkin and they were going to do some improvements. I don't know 100% if that's actually happening or not, but it was certainly something that had been discussed. And no, Argon, I'm not going to sell Hashid mine for $400 because that just wouldn't be nice, especially because everybody's seen how bad a soldering job and build this is with the wonky Pro Micro on it. All right. And of course, if you've never checked out our podcast before, we have weekly episodes. You can find all of our content on www.theboardpodcast.com. Okay. Just as that dodgy handwriting says on our place card. There we go. And if you want to support us, of course, you can either go and buy some merchandise at our Teespring store or on Redbubble. Just search for The Board Podcast. Or if you'd like to, you can also make donations straight through our PayPal Me link as well. Glad to see some more MKB casts. Yeah, of course. And Asus Overclock did actually do one, but I think somebody else may actually have been running another one. Mitchell, somebody or other. Just have a look under group buys, I suppose, on Make Market with Gherkin and see how that comes up. All right, I think that's pretty much it. We're a couple of minutes just before 2 hours. So 2 minutes to 2 hours. Unless if you guys have any questions that you want to ask me straight away, we might sort of end it there. Yeah. Pretty close to the size of the logo. Yeah, Andrew, that's right on. Look at that. That's pretty cool. That's amazing, actually. Excellent observation. Excellent observation. All right. Well, if that's the case, and I don't think there's any other questions that are coming out from the chat, feel free, of course, guys, to hang out if you want in the chat. And sort of talk amongst yourselves if you like, or by all means you can also just throw us questions on Reddit, on Slack, on Discord, or on YouTube as well. So I'm going to end the stream. Thank you very much everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. Just got to find my mouse cursor there. And of course, this week's episode will be recorded this weekend and be out very soon. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next stream. Thank you very much. And as usual, until next time, happy clacking.